Te reo ererangi o te mānia. This episode was produced in Otatahi by Plains Media, with support from New Zealand On Air.
You've heard the dragons roar. Now it's time to hear the ocean's answer. Welcome back to Avis's next adventure, the continuation of Avis and the Promise of Dragons. I'm Audrey Worsley, your guide into the deep. This is Avis and the Call of the Kraken by Healther McQuillan, published by Ahoy, an imprint of the Cuba press in 2024. Ready? Hold your breath. The sea is waking. Avis walked Theo briskly back to the front of the dairy. She looped his leash over the dog hitching post and opened the jangling door. Miss Papalu was bustling around the back of the shop. She ducked into the back room, then turned, greeting Avis with a wide smile. "We haven't seen you for a while. Milk emergency? Or a chocolate emergency today?" Mrs. Papalu's laugh was like wind chimes. Avis grinned. The days of milk emergencies were probably over now that Bruno wasn't living at home, and her chocolate emergencies were over too since the dragons had stopped growing. Now they only ate chocolate when Melinda was doing an experiment, or as an extra special treat. Generally, they thought it was best not to have them visible or breathing fire in a suburban garden. "I actually wanted to ask you about the boat parked out the back," Avis said. "Noah's Ark," said Miss Papalu. "You'll have to ask Mr. Papalu about that boat. When you do, expect to listen for a very long time. He'll tell you all about the hydraulic steering and the 4-stroke outboard motor and the fish finder sonar thingy. That boat and fishing, those are the things he loves most. After, well, me and the kids, of course. Isn't that right, Lulu?" She called into the back room. "Your uncle loves that boat a lot, eh?" A tall girl came out from the back room. Her thick dark hair was wound into a top knot, with wisps curling down her neck. She was wearing the local secondary school uniform and holding a book. "He loves that boat," Lulu said, "and Auntie loves the fish he brings back into the freezer. It's all LOVE all around." She patted her tummy. "Avis, this is our niece Lulu, who is staying with us for the high school. Lulu, this is Avis, one of our best customers." Avis smiled shyly at the girl. "Talofa lava, Avis," said Lulu. Hi," said Avis, suddenly shy and awkward. She had wished she had said Talofa lava in reply. She hung her head. "Is that your dog?" Lulu asked, walking towards the front door, where Theo was staring at them through the glass. Sort of. That's Theo. I'm pet-sitting him," said Avis. She looked up and saw Lulu nodding encouragingly. "I suppose you want to be a vet?" said Lulu. Avis vehemently shook her head. Lulu nodded. "Half the kids in my class told the careers teacher they wanted to be vets, but then she told them that vets spend most of the time either dealing with the messy ends or putting animals to sleep, so that put them off. I said I wanted to be an explorer, and she said there have been a lot of redundancies in that job as Earth has already been fully explored. It's like she was deliberately trying to put kids off their dreamed careers. I reckon she's in the wrong job." Avis's shyness was dissolving. "You could explore the deep parts of the ocean, or outer space." "I already do. Only, it's all in my imagination," said Lulu, turning over the book in her hand to reveal the cover, where a fantasy dragon had been superimposed over the control panel of a spacecraft. The dragon's wings were paper-thin and let the light of distant stars shine through. Its snout was long and thin and whiskery. Avis nearly said dragons didn't have whiskers. She had to stop herself from saying things about dragons all the time. It was hard knowing things and not having anyone to share them with. Not anyone her age, anyway. She guessed Lulu was about a year older. "What were you going to say?" Lulu asked. "Nothing." Avis felt very stupid again. Why can't I think of something clever to say? Her hand touched the dragon's hair in its satin bag beneath her sweatshirt. She needed consolation. Humbert responded with a soft hum. Lulu looked at Avis questioningly, then added, "I lied to the careers teacher. I actually want to be a journalist." "Nice to meet you, Avis." She returned to the back room. Mrs. Papalu watched her go with a concerned look on her face, then turned to Avis. "Now, did you come in to buy something, or just to talk about the boat?" "Just about the boat. I'll tell Melinda to call Mr. Papalu. He would like that very much. Miss Child is our good friend from way back." Mrs. Papalu changed the subject. "Did you notice that magazine display? Avis's breath caught in her throat. She hadn't noticed the display, and looking around, she still couldn't see it. She raised her hands in bewilderment. Miss Papaloo grinned, pointing towards the big chest freezer. Beyond it, the magazine rack was squeezed into the back corner of the shop. "We have a contract to sell them, but I don't think we need to wave them in people's faces, eh?" "Thanks," said Avis. This week, none of her family was featured on any of the magazine covers, at least as far as she could see. Maybe Mum and her famous ex-all-black boyfriend are old news, she thought. As she walked through her back to Melinda's, Avis imagined scenarios where paparazzi on jet skis were chasing her family until they were tipped into the ocean by an undersea earthquake. The dragon's tear at her chest vibrated with a surge of pulses. Thrum, thrum, thrum. It was not Humbert. She knew his tone. So then, who? It was the same surge she had felt before seeing the ocean shudder. Maybe she'd only been imagining an undersea earthquake? When she pulled it out, the dragon's tear was flared with purple and orange for a moment. Someone was anxious and excited. As she watched it, it fell still and translucent. While Avis was out, Melinda had been researching the drilling rig. She reported to Avis as they sat together at the kitchen table. It was just as she suspected. Companies with existing licenses were permitted to drill at new sites. "But what if they're causing damage, like that underwater earthquake I saw?" said Avis. Melinda asked her to describe what they'd seen in more detail. As Avis told her about the change of colour and the ripples that had rocked the drilling rig platform, her dragon tear pulsed again. Thrum, thrum, thrum. She tipped it from its pouch and held it in her hand, puzzled. Now it was mostly orange. "Humbert?" She looked out the window and could see Humbert and Princess both dozing in the tunnel house. "Can I see?" asked Melinda. She turned Avis's dragon tear in her hand and frowned at it before handing it back. "Let me tell you about something else I've been working on while you were at school." It was Humbert's idea. He figured out how to widen his frequency so he can communicate with me directly. As well as translators, it seems our dragon tears can work like a walkie-talkie. The Teju Chokar can transmit their thoughts by... But if the tears work like walkie-talkies, then could someone else be using the same frequency? Avis interrupted. "That's one theory. I need to run some experiments, but couldn't it just be magic? It doesn't always need to be science." Melinda grinned. "Once studied, observed, and understood, the myths and fairy tales become science. I think they're even more fascinating that way." Avis knew she was never going to win this argument. Having two dragons was no fairy tale. Fairy tales were simpler, with less poo. Melinda got up, snapping her laptop shut. "Right, now, though, our priority is to find somewhere safe for our dragons." Thrum, thrum, thrum. Avis watched 3 strong pulses in waves of crimson move through her dragon's tear. She tried to imagine the somebody or something that was trying to communicate. Dolphins, she hoped. They use sonar. Or maybe a mermaid? What else could be out there? "We still need to find a boat to get to the island," said Melinda. "Oh, I was going to tell you," said Avis. Avis crouched down and squished her backpack into the cloak bay cubicle she'd been assigned when they moved to their brand new classroom block at the start of the year. Hers was a bottom cubicle, in the middle of row 5. The worst position. It wasn't so bad in the mornings when people arrived at different times, but at each break and after school she was jostled and stepped on. Avis had come up with 3 sensible solutions. Each morning she would take a piece of fruit out of her lunchbox and place it in her pocket to avoid the fruit snack scramble at mid-morning. Before she collected her lunch, she went to the toilets where she washed her hands thoroughly, so that by the time that she got back to the cubicles, the lunchbox scramble was over. At the end of the day, she waited in the classroom and tidied away a few things until the cloak bay was clear. This was also a sensible thing to do because it endeared her to the teachers. "Such a great class citizen," Mr. Hawke said, beaming. Ms. Fleming was the head teacher in the new learning space, and she was Avis's favourite. Avis wished she could have her for all her lessons again, like last year, but they had to share teachers now. Mr. Hawke was her home teacher. He was nice enough, but he had the habit of confiscating things. Avis always managed to keep her dragon tear hidden under her t-shirt. Being Friday and the end of the week, there had been nothing but a single banana in the fruit bowl at Melinda's. It was already covered in little brown spots, but Avis didn't mind. Her dad hadn't always managed to keep fresh fruit in the cupboards either. She had learned not to be a fussy eater. Avis eased the banana carefully into the pocket of her shorts. The pocket wasn't quite big enough, and the end of the banana stuck out, but it was okay. She would put it in her book tray as soon as they were let into the learning space. Drake Snelling and his mate Conan were approaching. Avis wished she could camouflage like a dragon, but Humbert said that required scales, so instead she stepped aside out of their way. It meant she was closer to the wall so that when Drake shoulder barged her, she bashed against the cleaner's cupboard door. And when Drake pushed his full weight against her, the banana squished, its skin split and banana flesh oozing inside her pocket. "Hey, Mavis, look where you're going," Drake Snelling walked on. Conan followed, snickering. Avis yelled after Drake, "You promised my brother you'd leave me alone." Drake turned and sneered. "Yeah, but that was before your ugly brother left the country. What, you thought I wouldn't find out?" Avis hated it when anger gobbled up her clever words. "He's not ugly," was all she could come up with. She turned on Conan and yelled, "What are you looking at?" and stomped off to the toilets. She tipped as much of the squished banana as she could into the waste bin. She was so angry at Drake, her hands trembled. He had promised not to bully her anymore because he was so scared of Bruno. Now Bruno was gone, and Drake knew about the lizards, and Humbert. If he isn't too scared, he might tell. Avis's only hope was that it would sound so absurd that maybe no one would believe him. Drake Snelling was not well liked. Avis turned her slimy pocket inside out and scraped away the last of the banana mush with her fingernails. Banana goo had oozed into the seams. She was mad at Bruno for going off and leaving her with the Drake problem he'd promised to deal with. She was mad at Melinda for only having bananas. Everyone knew they were terrible to bring to school. Avis pulled her shorts off so she could rinse the pocket under the tap. She was so angry she didn't even care someone might walk in at any moment and see her in her undies. If they did, she would swear at them. She was that mad. Water soaked and splashed over the rest of the shorts. Even after she had wrung them out and put them back on, they were wet through on one side and damp everywhere else. Avis flung open the toilet door and let it slam behind her. She walked straight into class and sat down at the table by the window, her arms folded, lips pressed together. Her butt was cold, her pocket dripped. In the months she had spent getting to know Humbert and working beside Melinda, recording the observations of the Teju Choka, school had lost its shine for Avis. Everyone was excited about the big new learning space and flash furniture, not Avis. She hated having to compete for a desk each day and worrying about who would end up sitting beside her. She found it hard to concentrate with all the movement and background noise from the other groups. And she felt lonelier somehow, even with more people in the room. Most of them were friendly. They let her join in and they chatted a bit, but they weren't her friends. There wasn't anyone she could share secrets with. They all thought dragons were imaginary. She clutched her dragon's tear through her school shirt and wondered how much of her miserable mood was she transmitting right now. Humbert responded with a hum of sympathy and a shuddery vibration of his desire to immediately come to her aid. She shuddered too and sent back a very strong message in mind talk. "Don't come." The dragon's tear at her chest revved into a whine that buzzed inside her skull. "Shh," hissed Avis. She realized that even if she had a friend, she wouldn't have been able to share the secret of Humbert. It would be too dangerous. As she was thinking about all the dangers that awaited a real dragon in this world, collectors, hunters, biosecurity officers, she felt that prickle that you get when someone is watching you. She let go of the tear and looked behind her. It was Archie Young, one of Drake Snelling's gang. She poked out her tongue. "He's spying on me for Drake." The thought came rushing into her brain, and it upset her enough that she got up and followed Archie to the other end of the learning space where the art tables were. Above them on the wall hung her vibrant drawings of a dragon, the one with coppery scales and a long pointed snout and sharp teeth and devious amber eyes. Mr. Hawke had commended Avis on her attention to detail and her very imaginative artwork. Archie stopped right under the picture. Avis bore down on him, getting up into his space. His eyes were open wide and his pupils were dilated. She was glad he was afraid. She wanted them all to be afraid of her. That would stop them from the bullying. She lifted her lip in a sneer to show her teeth, wishing she had teeth the size and sharpness of Humbert's. Then they'd really be afraid of me. "I've got a message for you to pass on to Drake," she said through clenched teeth. She hadn't planned to send a message, but as soon as her right hand balled into a fist, she knew the message she wanted to send. She swung her arm. Her fist flew. Archie ducked. Avis had been aiming at Archie's shoulder, but her fist, muscles tense, knuckles white, connected with the hard bone of his cheek at the corner of his left eye. Archie recoiled, his hands protecting his face too late. He fell against the art table and slid down to the vinyl floor saying, "Ow! Ow!" Avis stood frozen to the spot, her fists uncurled, tears stinging in her eyes. There were shouts from other kids. A crowd formed. Avis clutched the dragon tear. "Humbert, help!" The crowd parted for Mr. Hawke. In the school office, lovely Sandra took Archie to the sick bay for an ice pack. Not so lovely Carol sat at the reception desk, glaring at Avis. "You'll have to explain yourself to Mrs. Adler," Carol said. "No point wasting your tears on me." Avis sat on the floor outside the principal's office, her tummy shifting with worry. She'd experienced worry tummy a lot when her mum and her dad were getting divorced, and when they'd moved to the dead end of Menagerie Street, and when she had started at this new school, and when she had to look after a newly hatched dragon. Lately, her life had been one episode of worry tummy after the other. She took deep breaths through her nose and let them out slowly, wishing she had done that before she had punched Archie. She clutched the dragon's tear. There was no response from Humbert, and hadn't been since she told him to shush. Mrs. Adler opened the door and called her in. Avis explained to Miss Adler that it was an accident. Miss Adler sat at her desk and looked doubtful. "I meant to hit his shoulder," Avis explained. Miss Adler looked bemused. "I know it was wrong. I'm sorry I hit Archie," said Avis, which was the truth. She had really wanted to hit Drake. Miss Adler said she understood that Avis had been going through a lot lately, but that was no excuse. She had to learn self-control. Violence never solved anything. Avis nodded at everything the principal said. It was the usual stuff adults say. That was the trouble. Avis knew it already. It was wrong to hit. It was wrong to let your temper get the better of you. It was wrong to lose self-control. But knowing hadn't been enough. She still punched Archie young, and she still didn't understand why. She'd been so angry, so sad, and so alone. Humbert was trying to be her friend, and he couldn't help her with this. Avis glanced up as Archie walked past the door with an ice pack held to his cheek. He looked at her through the open doorway and took his hand away for a moment, revealing a roundish, fist-sized red mark. Consequences, she thought. That's the thing about real life that's different from fairy tales. In fairy tales, heroes make the right choices and everything works out right in the end. But in real life, things go wrong and then get worse. Life didn't care about happily ever after endings. Sometimes people like Drake Snelling got away with doing terrible things, and the usually good kids like her, she still thought of herself as basically good, got caught out the first time they let their temper get the better of them. Miss Adler said she was very busy today and would schedule a restorative session between Avis and Archie for Monday morning. For the rest of the day, please try to stay away from him, Avis. You'll be in the timeout room today for morning tea and lunchtime. Normally, I would stand you down for the rest of the day, but Mr. Hawke seems to have faith in you, and I think we can resolve this differently. Nonetheless, I will record the incident and contact your parents. She checked her computer screen. Your father. Dad's in Australia until Sunday, said Avis. Then I'll make a note to call him on Monday, said Miss Adler. And she did. Avis knew she would make the call because, say what you like about Miss Adler, she always followed through. When Avis got back to class, people were gathering their pencil cases and topic books for a whole studio lesson. 80-something kids turned and stared at her as she passed. Avis sat at the small table on the side of the room that was always reserved for the naughty kids who needed time out. Mr. Hawke gave her a worried look but continued to hand out permission slips for the sailing trip her class was doing next week. The whole studio had been split into 6 groups going to the harbour either Monday, Tuesday or Wednesday for half-day sailing lessons. Mr. Hawke was accompanying each sailing group as the teacher in charge, and Miss Fleming and Miss Martin would stay behind with the remaining groups at school. Avis was the first group on Monday, which included everyone whose name started A to E. That meant her group included Drake and Archie too. Not for the first time, Avis wished her parents had named her Zoe. Miss Fleming played them a video showing all the different parts of the single-person Optimus yachts that they would learn to sail. Rig, hull, foist, mast, rudder, stern, battens, bulkhead, Miss Fleming recited. And what else? Hull, called out Conan, who wasn't paying attention because he was fiddling under his desk with a mini Rubik's Cube. The memory of him sniggering made Avis's tummy squirm. She unclenched her fist. I mustn't hit people. Mr. Hawke strode over to Conan and held out his hand. I'll have that, he said, and took the Rubik's Cube, dropping it into the drawer in the teacher's desk, which was so full of confiscated items that it stuck as he tried to close it. Avis added words to the boat diagram in front of her. She took out felt-tip pens and coloured in the hull, drawing curling green and blue waves around her Optimist. Mr. Hawke looked over her shoulder. Lovely attention to detail, he said. Thrum, thrum, Thrum. Avis clutched the tear at her chest. A moan escaped her lips. Are you okay, Avis? Mr. Hawke asked. You look very pale. I wonder if you haven't completely recovered from yesterday. I'm fine, she whispered. Maybe she's seasick already, said Drake, snarling. Or maybe she's caught a disease of her imaginary dragon. Some of his mates sniggered. Ravis, the raving lunatic, hissed Drake. Avis's fists clenched. Her anger roiled again, but now it was Humbert she was angry at. Why didn't you eat Drake the snake when you had the chance? After an exhausting day at school, Avis trudged towards the heavy green gates of Melinda's house. A forlorn, wolf-like howl reached her ears. She picked up the pace. She used her key to unlock the padlock on the chain and shoved the gate aside with her shoulder. The howling immediately stopped, and Theo came bounding down the drive to greet Avis with jumps and kicks and happy tail wagging, whatever had upset him forgotten. Avis wasn't happy, though. She kicked the gravel and scuffed her feet up the drive. Humbert sat under the canopy of rhododendron branches, his head between his knees. What did you do to upset Theo? She asked. Don't blame me. He doesn't appreciate Princess's singing. Princess sings? She has to practice at high frequency that's inaudible to humans because of your backyard voice roll. It's so annoying to have to be quiet all the time. I wasn't even making any noise and you told me to shush, he snorted. Avis dumped her school bag in the damp grass. I didn't mean for you to shush the whole rest of the day, she snorted. I needed you and you didn't even care. Melinda said you have to work through whatever it was yourself. So now you do what Melinda says. Avis didn't wait for an answer, but stormed into the house and along the dark corridor to her bedroom for the week. She flung herself onto the bed, without even taking her sneakers off, and lay with her face buried in the duvet. There was a tap on the door, and Melinda asked to come in. Avis didn't answer. She felt a weight shift at the end of her bed, and Melinda sat down. I was 11 once, hon, she said. I'm nearly 12, Avis snarled, but her words came out muffled. It's not an easy time. There's so much going on, and you've got more going on than most people. It's no wonder you're confused. I'm not confused, said Avis, turning her head to one side. Humbert tells me that snaky Drake kid did something mean and you got mad at him, but took it out on someone else. Is that right? Humbert is a little tattletale and a snitchy little weasel, Avis thought. Humbert also told me you were very sorry about it. He said it took a while to understand why you would be because that kid you hit was one of the mean ones. He said it took a while for him to understand why you would be because that kid you bit was one of the mean ones. His name's Archie and I didn't bite him, I punched him. In the face, said Avis, rolling halfway over. She expected to see a shocked, stern face, but Melinda just blew out a small jet of air. That's bad, isn't it? From a scientific perspective, Melinda started, a glint in her eye. Avis let out an annoyed sigh and wiped her nose on the back of her hand. Melinda cleared her throat and began again. From a scientific perspective, behaviours are based on feelings and feelings are based on needs, so it is our job to figure out what we need and whether our behaviour is going to meet that or not. I need them to stop bullying me. I thought maybe if they were scared of me, they'd leave me alone. Melinda twisted her grey ponytail into a messy bun as she spoke. Or maybe, when they say mean things about you, they'll be true. Avis still wanted to blame someone else. Why'd you tell Humbert not to help me? Her voice came out whiny. You can't always rely on others to get you out of trouble. It's up to you to make the right decision for yourself. And just so you know, it took an awful lot of my willpower, and Princess's too, to stop Humbert from flying straight to your school, and well, I don't want to imagine what could have happened. Neither did Avis, but she did, and shuddered. Melinda suggested that after Avis had a snack and made peace with Humbert, they could all go down to the dairy and have a word with Mr. Papaloo. Not only does he have a boat, but he's exactly the sort of trustworthy person we need. When Avis asked why, Melinda tapped the side of her nose. Noah and I go way back. I'm fed up with these secrets, thought Avis. She got up and blew her nose on some tissues, then went to find Humbert, who was curled miserably in his sleeping nest in the tunnel house. The tunnel house no longer had any of the high-security features like key-punch entry and electrified wires that it had when it had been a sanctuary for Melinda's endangered lizards. Now, one end was wide open enough for two of the Teju Choka dragons to come and go easily. They had built a nest of tangled foliage and soft leaves. The atmosphere inside the tunnel would stay damp and cool. Sorry I told you to shush, Avis said. I was angry with everyone. When I first hatched, hummed Humbert, lifting his head a little so he could look at her with one of his amber eyes. I was all alone. Then you came along. Do you remember the first thing I did when I met you? You bit me, said Avis, remembering how his tiny sharp teeth had pierced her finger and left 2 beads of blood. Because you laughed at me. I didn't mean to laugh. I know. We had a misunderstanding. Today your thoughts were so muddled I couldn't tell what you needed. He lifted his snout and breathed warm air onto Avis's forehead. Maybe that's why you bit that boy, because of a misunderstanding? I didn't bite him, I punched him. Pretty hard. Humbert shifted over a bit and Avis climbed onto his nest and sat with her back against his shoulder. The breath from Humbert's nostrils was like a fan heater, blowing warm air towards her. Then Humbert asked, How did I do? How did you do at what? Asked Avis. At being a friend. I searched my ancestral knowledge for how to be a friend. One of the things that came up was called wise counsel. Did I do okay? You're a natural, said Avis. And that wraps up today's tale on Spin Me a Tale. But don't wander too far. Join me next Saturday at 9:30 a.m. on Plains Media, broadcasting on 96.9 FM for the next episode in our journey. If you want to relive the magic, all past episodes are waiting at plains.org.nz. Let your imagination stay wide awake.